Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken heart and soul consciousness. Come journey with us exploring the meaningfulness of astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sue Rose Minahan, Talk Cosmos. Today is February 1st, and the calendar, the celestial calendar, is igniting us into so many dimensions. We are celebrating within a context of a solar eclipse in 2 weeks, the fire horse, the Lunar New Year, and our subject for today, just a few days after that, where there is a conjunction between our outer planets, the steady Saturn, and the seen and the unseen of Neptune, that are going to be at 0 degrees Aries. And that happens to be, as astrologers are well aware, and we're bringing attention to the general public, the beginning of the zodiac. It's a phenomenal affair, something that we've not experienced. It's routine as far as their conjunction, you might say, but not at the beginning of the zodiac. We'll talk a lot more about that in the future. And we do have a wonderful guest. We'll get all to that at this threshold that we're entering of consciousness is our intent to share. Thank you for joining. And now we're ready. We'll begin.
In the first week of the month, Talk Cosmos ignites a conversation exploring planet cycle relationships in a cosmos to understand their archetypal consciousness and meaningfulness for individuals and the collective. Blending world events, mythology, and philosophy, these are the astrologers identifying the deeper impact of the planets buzzing in our daily lives.
I'm Sue Rose Minahan, founder of Talk Cosmos since 2018. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, consultant, speaker, writer, vibrational astrology student, Dwarf Planet University graduate, Kepler Astrology Toastmasters Club charter member. I have a fine arts music degree plus a certificate in jazz. I'm an artist, musician, and certified color energy life coach. Especially, I love mythology and esoteric philosophies.
And I'm Dr. Laura Tad. I work as a spiritually oriented psychological astrologer with students and clients around the world. As a counselor, writer, and educator, I love helping people recognize their inner strengths, take advantage of auspicious moments, and navigate times of challenge with greater ease. On my own podcast, Mythic Sky Storytime, I discuss astrology, mythology, and actualizing our full potential. Learn more at mythicsky.com.
Plus, a special guest who we will introduce in just a short moment.
And as the ancient Hermetic Code reveals,
as below, so above. As above, so below.
Hello, Laura, Dr. Tad.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you. This is a treat as we continue into this year. This is such an astounding celestial moment. You put on your calendar, Christmas and whatnot, but this is awakening. It's a moment. Yes.
Yeah. As we'll talk about, it's a not all that common phenomena that we're stepping into.
This is true. So we'll begin. Here we go. We have with us, Dr. Stormie Grace. Hi, Stormie.
Hi, nice to see you both.
It is. I'm so glad you're Zooming or airing in from Spain. We're halfway across the globe in the ocean. Laura on the edge of the eastern continent of the North America, and you in Spain. And I think that really spells out a lot what this new consciousness brings in, is that interconnection of all of our wavelengths. But let me talk about you. Dr. Stormie Grace is in Spain, and her website is stormiegrace.com. She has a YouTube that we'll talk about, at Stormie Grace, and her wonderful educational business school at legatiaacademy.com. Dr. Tad is mythicsky.com, and she has her YouTube at Mythic Sky Astrology, and myself, Talk Cosmos, and at Talk Cosmos. So Dr. Stormie Grace, is a professional astrologer. She's a conference lecturer in both nationally and internationally, a keynote presenter, a workshop facilitator, and author with 2 books coming out, one on May 8th through Amazon. I just pre-ordered. You can do it too. And we'll have how to do that in the middle of the segment talk here. She's an instructor with a Doctor of Management, DM in Business. And that really, it informs her new school, or her school with Legatia Academy. And her YouTube is free. It involves a lot of education, astrofluency framework, and more than that, she loves Venus and dedicates Venus Reset, which is transformational program to help women. So look out for that. And I am pleased that you're sharing time with us, as you do with Astrology Hub, Evolving Astrologer in Midheaven magazine. It's a compact agenda.
That's what happens when you get Mercury and Gemini in the 10th. There's going to be some busyness.
We all have a beautiful Gemini. I think that's where we get along so fabulously. Jumping into this immediately, look at the solar system, folks. It's on the 20th of February from our planet here on Earth, where these amazing planets, Saturn, as you can see with the rings, is going to conjunct Neptune way out there, little blue iridescent at 0 degrees zodiac. So keep that in mind. But meanwhile, shifting back, when I researched on Solar Fire, which is one of the wonderful astrological softwares, it goes back to 5000 BC. And as of 4361 BCE, before Common Era, it also was at the 0 point with just 3 degrees, 3 minutes. How can we even begin to think about that? All we can realize, besides understanding what Aries is, and we'll talk about that, was this transition between the nomadic life entering, working into civilization. You know, agriculture and settlements. There were really big towns, big cities with farming communities and domesticating animals and plants. They built, villages. I don't know about towns, but they had villages. So people were congregating and pottery and weaving. It wasn't yet for another 1,000 years that writing and the wheels started, but it was moving towards that destination. Any comments, or shall we go on?
Well, I guess just to frame this, so this is a conjunction that happens roughly every 36 years, but its occurrence in Aries is really appears to be the least frequent of any of them. And it occurring at this degree, that's where Sue's bringing up this time period from 6,000 years ago. It hasn't been where it will be on the 20th in 6,000 years. And I did some research as well that to get it close, it was at 2 degrees in 593 BCE, which was the birth of democracy in Greece.
Yeah. So huge. I appreciate that because it illuminates, it emphasizes the consciousness, that we can understand that tools help us become more conscious. And as I think back on history, and we try to organize our time differently, and we're certainly organizing according to how we think with the divinity. We'll jump to this in just a moment, because what you're bringing up is so important. And if I can, we'll jump back, jump forwards. Time has no sense. Shall we talk about Aries, the three of us, this spark plug? Stormie, you have some thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you're going to talk about Aries, you're going to definitely have some thoughts. But thinking about just the vibration of Aries, one of the things I'm the most excited about is realizing that Aries is one of our masculine signs, and coming here at the 0 point, the start point of masculine energy, the start point of doing, of leading, of pursuing and initiating forward. It feels like at the very beginning of the Aries energy, it's not just an astrological event. Instead, it's a bit of a collective chapter where a whole identity around these concepts get new leadership, new reality, new spirituality behind them as well. And I try to remember that, at least through the Roman lens, when we're talking about Aries energy, Aries was seen as the sacred gardener, not just as the warrior, but as the sacred gardener as well. So thinking back, even 6,400 years ago, we had new agriculture going on. I think that we find ourselves in the same terrain as something entirely new is being born into the world at the Aries point right now as well.
I love that. Yes, as far as growth, because really that little seed that came out of the Piscean energy wants to sprout and is digging its roots in. That is so true. And our idea of Aries, as far as evolutionary goes, not evolutionary, but vibrational by astrology, is that it wants honesty. Aries wants honesty and to know where you're coming from. So changing our concept, introducing, just like what you're saying here, that it's a gardener.
Yeah, well, and I think too, there's a part of it, if we think about Aries or Eris, the god in Greece for Mars, this piece that he's also the god of the quest. He, yes, he's the god of war, but not necessarily aggressive in terms of instigating war. It's like going to fight on behalf of something or someone, going after something, that there can be that questing, seeking energy that, as the cardinal energies, all the cardinal signs have that sort of questing energy. And so there's that part of it too, of like striving forward, going towards something that we don't know what the finish line is. You're just going ahead anyway.
You know what I like? Oh, were you finished? I'm sorry. Okay, good. I love this idea that perhaps we'll start reframing our definitions. Like, why call him the god of war? It just immediately puts so much connotation into, and I'm not questioning you, Laura, because but just recognizing that it's a larger context, because I really identify with this idea of defense and causes, and the idea of the exploratory, the pioneering, the way of becoming the identity. So much of it, and the conquest and of growing, really new self, new purpose, that it can, and again, going back to vibrational astrology, bump into what somebody else might be thinking, which can then have a conflict, but that isn't the intention. So at any rate, I present that to the world at large. Perhaps this whole era will start redefining, getting away from some of the cliches to open up a larger understanding.
Yeah, well, and identity, right? If we think about Aries' key phrase being I am, who is that I too, right? It could be individual or communal or cultural or country-wise or globally. Who is that I am, and how that what is that self-identification, and how that, and even the concept of self going through some metamorphosis with this conjunction that's happening.
Okay. As a note, for those that might be wondering, your Saturn would be in Aries every 29 and a half years by itself, just as the planet orbiting. And these are the dates. The current cycle, actually, as of right now, started February 13th, 2026, and it'll go until April 12th, 2028. When Saturn and Neptune conjunct, regardless of what sign they're in, it's every 36 years. And in the last 2,000 years, since the Common Era, which we can relatively think is recent compared to 6,000, Laura discovered a few thoughts. If you want to.
Well, I think I talked about some of that already.
Oh, okay, good. Then we're going on. Well, the fact is, then we'll jump.
I'm not sure what you're getting at with that.
That's okay. Well, I'm in the moment, as the moment is, and the moment isn't. Anyway, so let's lead on. At the beginning of it, interestingly, it was the very first conjunction was in Sagittarius, which, as just a comment here, is really involved with a belief structure. So it seems like perhaps we could say that there is relatively thinking that however we're thinking of new consciousness is having the belief patterns. What are we thinking of?
Yeah. Well, and so I guess what you were getting at, Sue, and I wasn't following your question. Okay. So what I did discover in my research was, because even just looking in the last 2,000 years, right? So rather than looking at times where we don't have as much connection to historically. So just looking at in the last 2,026 years, this conjunction of Neptune and Saturn appears to happen in Aries, hands down the least that it's happened in any sign. And it was tied with Gemini. The next one is in Gemini, but it didn't even start in Gemini till the 1200s. So it was much more frequent in Gemini in the same time period. But the second latter half of the zodiac, it happened 10 times in Pisces, 10 times in Scorpio, 10 times in Sag, and the same time period that it only happened 4 times in Aries.
So it is rare, however we look at this. It's very informative as far as this archetypal energy. Here are 4 that happened since the Common Era. Starting in 232 Common Era, in the middle at 16 degrees Aries. Then when Christianization of the Roman Empire in 555, see Common Era. Again, it flipped. It has its cycle. It was in the very beginning. It continued at 6 degrees, almost 7 degrees Aries, when the Byzantine peak happened. I know you'll comment on this too, but I'm just running through this for the podcast. And that is in 1380 Common Era at 21 degrees Aries, when it was a lot in China with the Ming Dynasty, and then over in that same period with the Aztec Empire in Central America. And then the most recent has been for our consciousness, 1703 Common Era at 11 degrees 43 minutes, when quite a few things happened. Any comment before we go into that one, Laura?
No, I mean, I was looking at what were, things that might, in general, I like looking at history to see, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And so what's happened previously that might give us some indication of what we could see in this next cycle. And really looking at it, not so much as like what's going to happen in the 20th of February, but in particular, like over the next 36 years, what's going to be happening till we get this conjunction again in Gemini. And that energy is sort of in play to some extent for the next almost 40 years, even though the conjunction will move on. And so looking at patterns and these big, if we just think about the archetypes of Neptune, and Neptune about spirituality, about religion, and Saturn about structure, and Neptune is about dissolving things. And so how those archetypes have been interplaying.
Yes, but what I'm interested
in history.
Thank you. But let's talk specifically just about a few of these so we can integrate it a little bit more. And that is powerful. Like the Byzantine peak. Remind me, how does that play out? What's the importance? How did that that you recognize?
The Byzantine Empire is at its peak, which was in similar part of the world as Rome, right? And so in terms of this expansion of what authority, it was the most powerful empire, right? And Rome transitioning into a Christian, the Holy Roman Empire, right? Rome being, all roads lead to Rome, right? Like the expansion of these huge, powerful, politically powerful empires. Same thing with the Ming Dynasty,
leadership,
right?
identity.
One of the longest dynasties in China. It's when the capital in China was moved to Beijing, where it still is to this day. Happened during that period. And so looking at how that relates, because Saturn, one of the archetypes for Saturn being authority, being who's in charge, right? That these really big empires and that have been lasting impact.
Yes.
With this Aries point, with these Aries energy of going forward and the spreading of it, you could even say the disseminating of it, that's very cool. Aries.
So with beautiful.
These wide breadth empires.
So in 1703, St. Petersburg was founded. There was a publication in Vienna, a newspaper that is still being published. And on this continent, before the United States was even a reality, the first Lutheran pastor was
ordained,
which to me, in a sense, when I think of the Lutheran religion, he said, hey, you don't need to go to a priest. It started it inspired the Reformation. You can go directly to God. So it's another consciousness of how we relate to divinity, such as a Christianization. Not that one is right or wrong or anything, but I'm just trying to give an overview. And
in particular with Luther, right? It's like you individually, Aries, didn't need the priest.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
You
could talk to God on your own. Yep. You didn't need to go to the priest.
Yes,
so that feels very Neptune Aries energy to me in some ways.
We have a few minutes here. There's so much packed in here. But looking at the chart itself, it's maybe we have some. Stormie, put you on the spot here if you have some ideas how you want to interpret that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just massive. We've got a massive Aries stellium plus happening over here. So even just energetically being at the Aries point alone is big enough to get energetic attention from all of us and say something is certainly taking its shape and its seed here. But then when you just look how much is in Aries, to me, the sentiment is simply we are going to officially walk and move these particular areas and energies forward. But I am still fascinated by the fact, too, that we get to look at the vibration of the Pisces stellium that is here as well. Some things are still in the dreaming. We don't know exactly what they will be just yet, but we do have to begin to trudge forward. And in the Pisces vibration and the Neptunian vibration as well, although they are separate, one of the things I always think of is that we have to envision it in the intangible realms before we can bring it forward in tangible realms. And I always use the example of a chair. Before chairs were chairs, we were just thinking it would be great to not sit on the floor. And now there's chairs everywhere. So this to me feels very much so like this sentiment, as well as we look at the chart, just at view of looking at it. The other thing I was taking note of is that the lunar phase that this event is happening under is the crescent phase. So what has been in the dreaming is attempting to take tangible form, but it requires a break from what was in the past first. So we are at the initiation point of even being able to do that under this shape of light. And I think that plays a huge role. I work a lot in the lunar phasing, and I think that just plays a huge role in how we'll see this story unfold, aspects separate from that. Just that alone gives us a lot of information.
I like that empowerment of happening. We'll come back to some of these thoughts. I know we are getting ready for a little getaway break. So stay tuned with us because there's so much about other talking about this. I think we've already talked about the becoming new identity and the new consciousness and what direction along with the nodes, but it is the new start. So thank you. We'll be right back. While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the Yang period of Aquarius, ruled modernly by Uranus and Saturn in traditional astrology by the ancients. By leaving a cycle based on governing structures through both man-made and universal laws, Aquarius breaks established patterns, permitting the energy of freedom, just as its ruling planet Uranus spins on its side and orbits backwards. As a fixed air sign represented by the water bearer pouring the spirit of cosmic energy, Aquarius seeks to find like-minded, intuitively aligned souls to connect in social groups for the elevation and improvement of all.
This is psychological astrologer Dr. Laura Tad. Please join me, Michelle Fleming, and Edja Caleb February 21st through the 28th for Evolutionary Training's annual Goddess Awakening Retreat in Playa El Coco, Nicaragua. Enjoy daily yoga, well-being workshops, melt classes, baby sea turtles, and more. To register, go to mythicsky.com.
Talk Cosmos ignites insightful conversations to awaken heart and soul consciousness with hour-long programs every Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific on KKNW. Also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click their like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. You can listen to earlier podcasts since 2018, either on most podcast carriers or under the video tab on Talk Cosmos YouTube. To join our expedition and find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com and launch your week into the cosmic wonder.
This is Martha Norwalk. Every Sunday morning, beginning at 9 a.m., thanks in part to the Ananda Institute of Living Yoga, we cover the world of animals. This week, February 8th, it's BEST, Bioenergetic Synchronization Technique and Energy Code Sunday on Animal World. Linda Rasmussen joins us, and we'll take your phone calls, and she can help you and your animal friends with emotional, behavioral, and physical issues. Hope you can join us for Martha Norwalk's Animal World Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Get your daily dose of variety. Alternative Talk, 1150.
Okay, we will begin with a little in what our panelists are doing. Stormie, you have a book coming out. You want to tell about it?
I do have a new book coming out. It's the Big Book of Planetary Aspects, and it focuses on natal aspects and transit to natal aspects in the chart. And it's just like a very big Bible of aspects to help people enter the conversation and improve their astrological fluency. You know, I find that people often, particularly as they're learning, have a hard time getting into the conversation or conceptualizing the way that the planets are having a conversation. So I created a book to be able to help us on that journey. And it comes out in May, and I'm very excited. Please go grab it and put it on your bookshelf. I hope it gets to be one of those on the bookshelf for life books. That would be good.
Indeed. The link is right here with Amazon. And also you have Legatia Academy besides your other things, and that's for business. Yes?
It is. Yes, I absolutely just champion the world of astrologers and creative entrepreneurs running businesses that are aligned but also profitable. I think we've done an amazing job passing our craft down to each other, but we needed a bit more in the business area. And I absolutely love business and helping people build businesses that are right for them. And that's what we do in Legatia. There's no astrology. It is simply about business, but I only work with creative people. So I would love to help anybody who's looking to build something that's their own.
That's Legatia. Great. And people can go to stormiegrace.com or legatiaacademy.com. Laura, you have lots happening. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so I have just monthly astrology talks. I give sort of the astrology weather. So that occurs over Zoom on the second Wednesday of the month, just looking at some of the major aspects and how to work with them and unpack them for yourself. And then I have my own podcast, Mythic Sky Storytime, where I talk about different astrological happenings and through myth and meditation and different things. So I've been going thematically through every sign. I've got Pisces left to record, but that comes with a meditation tied to every sign. And so we've changed the dates for the Goddess Awakening retreat. It's now mid-March instead of the end of February. And so now we'll be there for the first day of spring. So part of the rituals we'll be doing is around honoring that transition and that Aries point of that ushers in the first day of spring in the Northern Hemisphere, even though we're pretty close to the equator in Nicaragua. So it's an amazing spot right where the jungle meets the ocean, and baby sea turtles and meditation and yoga and yummy food and coconut milk in your coffee that was a coconut
yummy.
half an hour before.
Goody.
So.
And you can go to mythicsky.com and find out all about it. And there is a moon journal that Laura has also created, and you can go to mythicsky.com, and it's an open-ended book where you can begin at any new moon that you want, and there's prompts and whatnot. And it's the 13 cycles, which is really fabulous. I have one, in fact.
And I do have a lunar calendar, or a calendar with the phases and the sign that it's in on my website. It's easy to Google, but then it's there to make it simple for folks to find too.
That's a service. For myself, there's plenty of past events here that are recent and still effective. There was a Capricorn Venus star point that Louise Eddington and Laura and I did that was our star point going ahead. And then also next week will be the solar eclipse, and that starts off a whole month of excitement. Jen Ing will specifically focus on the Lunar New Year, as she is trained in Chinese astrology. And then we have a vibrational astrology viewpoint of what the main vibrations will be for this Saturn Neptune that we are now talking about. More illumination, it'll bring up ideas. And then next month, we'll return with Laura for the Virgo lunar eclipse. Well, we have right now, besides what we talked about, as far as those ideas with the chart itself, I have the chart on the inside and 2 charts with the United States on the outside, and then 2 charts with Spain on the inside, because this is a world event. It's not just here with the United States, but for the United States, we can see that in the first slide here that Juno is being interconnected, you could say, yes? And Juno is our sacred contracts or alliances. We're renegotiating perhaps what that identity is in every way, like it's pretty strong.
Yeah, well, and I think, the Mars trine, Mars is, it's in less than a degree, or about a little more, it's about a degree of a trine. And that, speaking to that particularly, like Mars being the planet that we associate with Aries, and so that being this thread that so not only is this happening at the 0 point of Aries, but then the Mars is really involved. And how are we going to be proactive? And that this idea that, like, yes, there's this gestational period that Stormie was like, oh, we don't quite know everything because we've got all this stuff in Pisces, and so it's still forming, and yet we're going to be asked to maybe take action even if we don't quite know where we're headed yet.
And the United States, by progression, right now is in its progressed new moon time. So it is the sentiment really here that there's so much that is like, you're going to have to step forward on some kind of faith to figure out what's going on here or what's going to be next. It's just written all over, I think, the experience of this conjunction. There's just so much that's not fully tangible yet that's really trying. And so it may take a little bit. I don't think it'll be necessarily like smooth sailing as we get there, but it is possible.
And it's right at our root. I mean, it's at the base. When I say we, but the United States, this nation, it's at the IC. So it's very fundamental. We're really and leading up to this, we had a Chiron return of our healing ideas, a Pluto return. I mean, there's various energetic platforms, you could say, incrementally. But right now, I like this idea of the trust, the action, the reforming of identity.
And there's a famous Arabic quote, I believe, that's, the translation is "trust God, but tie your camel." That really feels like what this is.
I love that.
I did. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Right. So yes, this trust and still being proactive, which is that Aries energy, right? Not falling into complacency or just waiting for stuff to manifest, that there is this need to be proactive in the midst of things and bringing in some levels of consciousness. So we're not just operating unconsciously, which can be Neptune. And with all of that stuff in Pisces, there's a vulnerability to sort of operating unconsciously. And so like operating without all the knowledge, but still knowing that we don't know, as opposed to just taking
trusting
action.
Perhaps going back, yes, threading what you're saying there, along with what Stormie brought up, of trusting our past, knowing ourselves enough to trust that we can make an educated leap across to the next stone to get through the river. That's one way I think about it. Interestingly, in this chart, Eris, E-R-I-S, which is inclusivity versus exclusion, is requesting, demanding. There is not a request, but offering that what has been excluded must be included. And that's a huge realm, but I find that very powerful to recognize that energy is prevalent.
I think it's interesting, like in my experience of watching and experiencing Aries energy, Aries is not always the strongest number one, right? Aries is a really solid number two, though, right? Like if there's a plan, then I can execute it. And I do wonder if in many ways, as we're looking at it, particularly, we've got Jupiter in conversation in this particular chart anyway, if we're not having to actually look to other cultures and other countries and look further back and say, okay, how was this being done? And then how do we reshape? There's some of that, and then having the courage to walk it forward and put it in place. I think these will be stories we'll continue to hear about, particularly around spiritual awakening concepts.
Yes, I like that. We'll delve into that. We'll get through. Keep that in mind, folks. Yes, and thank you. For Spain, Stormie's living in Spain, and I was curious, okay, what's happening? Well, there's two charts for Spain, and I didn't have a chance, I'm sorry to say, whether or not this one in 1479, which is, because the second one is the restoration of the monarchy, which I'll show in a second. But is this one, do you know, Stormie, if this one is being used in Spain much?
This is not one that I have seen.
Okay, was in Campion's book, because there's many, like England has 8 of them, I think, over the years. Yeah, but it was interesting to me that if this is in the consciousness somewhere of Spain, it's very fluid. It seems to me it's really somewhere in the roots of their soul, because they had a conjunction between Uranus and Neptune. And this Uranus, so it's like maybe a merging of the visions. I don't know. But with all that said, maybe we'll just jump to what is current. This was in 1975 when Juan Carlos became the monarch, restored as the monarch. And so you can see that it has quite a bit happening. And I thought, well, what's happening in Spain? And there's two significant points that are recent. One is that the high train speeds have 2 horrible accidents. And of course, Europe needs and works on the train system, and they're lowering the train speed, which is I think for any administration to make a change like that to decrease something is pretty significant. It's very thoughtful. And also, many people have been coming from Central America, from what I read, into Spain, and therefore the country is going to give legal status to 500,000 undocumented immigrants, providing they can show that they've lived there for 5 months up until New Year's.
Yeah, which is a massive thing, because even Spain is very bureaucratic and they're very tight on kind of how they would like things to be going. So it's almost a miracle that anybody gets into this place. So it's a big shift, but there's also, I think, a shift in the consciousness in what continuing to extend our arms to the world brings into the economy, brings into the community. You know, it's really interesting to see how that's working over here, coming from the American perspective.
Laura,
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think more broadly too. So like that, this archetype that we're looking at of Saturn, Neptune, that some of what that could be quite literally is like the dissolving of authority, the dissolving of rules. So things that have been, we thought, sort of carved in stone, Saturn-like energy, Neptune dissolves. And so the old way of things being done, that Saturnian old way, has that potential to sort of end in Aries quickly, right? Aries is such fast energy. And so it's not a slow dissolve, it's changing fast. And maybe, you know, even if the train speed is slowing, it changed quickly, right? Them changing it was not like, it didn't get stuck in bureaucratic, like, you know, arguing over it for 3 years. It just changed.
Yeah, that's a good point. What amazes me for this particular chart is the dual signature of Jupiter and the moon, one in Aries and one in they have a Cancer moon. So that, and it's square for action, it's family and identity, and it's in a sense really reestablishing how to embrace, because Latin America, of course, people speak, it may not be Spanish, it's more Latin American Spanish, and having tried to learn the language, I realize there's a difference subtly, just like we have in the United States, different vernaculars or different areas of speaking. But it is with that idea of economic growth and social unity. So perhaps it will be a statement towards the rest of the.
Yeah, I believe so. And Spain is so deeply rooted in the family concept that the idea of doing things to make or to keep families together is a A1 priority over here. So this would be, you know, in looking at the patterns that we see when Saturn and Neptune come together in general, like Laura was saying, the belief system's changing or changing very quickly. The power structure is reorganizing, particularly in any country. I think we can look at what are their primary themes, or what do they make a priority, and then we can look at how quickly those new visions are going to be emerging, and then they're going to take action on them. And for Spain, there is a powerful feminine force here. It is around women and families. Really, it's very, very strong here. And depending on where you are, you can feel that, you know, more or less.
Hawaii too is very family oriented. The Kiki, you know, it's, yes, indeed, I resonate, which in some ways you wonder where it isn't. Maybe that's the question, but it is so strong, you know, as a culture. Yeah, here. Laura, you've got ideas?
Well, just thinking about the feminine and how we were talking earlier, Sue, when we did a little pre-chat of like some of the shifts we may see may be about the feminine coming in new ways in what's been traditionally not open to women in terms of in religion, right? That they just swore in the first female archbishop in Britain ever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's seismic. Like, it may seem like, oh, okay, but it's like, no, to have a woman that elevated in the Church of England is a huge change.
Yeah.
And so how that, what has been, again, like religious law, you could think of Saturn Neptune going through a transition.
Absolutely.
Well, yes.
In Spain, where they were killing astrologers during the Inquisition, I lived in Spain as an active, working, practicing astrologer. I'm not here as a business coach or some other kind of cool title. I'm an astrologer and was welcomed right in. And I think that is exactly like you're saying, Laura, this spiritual law is really different because they were killing our people for a while.
Yeah.
Yes, and I love the idea of spiritual versus religious, just as a comment, because religion by definition says you need a deity, one which gives us pyramid system, but whereas we do consider it, but the spirituality of it just as a reference.
Yeah, and so I think, just even individually, one of the things this conjunction could mean is individual spiritual discipline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like
right?
that.
If you've struggled to have a meditation practice, if you've struggled to, right, like it's sort of been in your periphery and you've sort of wanted to be more proactive about that, this can bring in that energetic support to cultivate that in your own life.
Particularly because it's experiential. It goes back to what the Martin Luther was, that you don't need to have an intermediary person as a priest. You could do it directly, experience it. And again, with bringing in a spiritual practice, such as you're saying, it is that experience of growth, the personal experience that one would desire. I brought this chart back up just for your reference because of Ceres, bringing in the mother element that you're both speaking of, because I know in our conversation too, she is right there conjunct, which is a dwarf planet in between Mars and Jupiter in the asteroid belt, but truly a dwarf planet or personal dwarf planet as it's been expressed. And she is conjunct with Chiron, within a degree, close in degrees, and Eris in Aries, along with all of its, sextile, we could say, connected with that energy of Mars that in astrology rules, or I don't really like that word rules, but guides,
Mm-hmm. And I think that we're seeing we've got to have the first experiences in general of seeing the outer planets in 2025 all take a small short stand in masculine signs. And really, when this happens in my experience, it puts a container of the opposite sign to need to rebalance and wake up to itself. So I think we're seeing feminine energy, like women are going back and going, whoa, I haven't really learned to receive or practice receiving. I'm disconnected from my sacred pelvic bowl. My body has stories it's remembering. I have inflammation, Aries, in my body that if I don't come into a softer position, I'm not going to be able to navigate when these outer planets get back into these masculine signs. So it lends itself to that Ceres and Aries being like, you have to love you first. We have to go back and nurture this first. And then remember and wake up and add that to the collective rebalancing. Mm-hmm. And I think it gives an opportunity for our masculine energies to have their own awakening through the feminine awakening as well. It all comes together. It's not this or this in what I'm seeing in the astro and in the people.
There's great astrologers that are working with the masculine. Adam Gainsbourg, I know, it has regular like you do with Venus, to help men, because we're not separate, how one relates to the other. I love that.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the opportunities with that, particularly the Chiron series piece that's sort of happening simultaneously, is like healing the mother wound.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge part of all of that for ourselves, of not receiving, not feeling deserving of nurturing, not knowing how to express it in a healthy way, not having a scarcity of it. And so there's this lack. And so we're needy, right? So, or we just shut off and we disconnect emotionally, and that leads to all kinds of health stuff, right? So this piece of part of that spiritual discipline is also like, it's to allow us to have that human experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, but we came in to have the human experience, right? And so how to maintain that spiritual discipline and have it not tip into spiritual bypassing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I agree.
Well, on an immediate basis, because we're going to close in a few minutes, as always, sweet things have to continue and go on. And so I thank you both so much for joining, Dr. Tad and Dr. Grace, Dr. Stormie Grace and Dr. Laura Tad. But the nodes will be shifting. So we're in this holistic definition of how to recategorize, and we're going to be entering, as of summer, a new leap in this consciousness, how to be our greatest self in the network of being, right? We could say. Any thoughts?
I feel like I never liked the phrase "New Year, New Me," but I do feel like it's like "New Year, New Us." Is what's going to be on the table with the nodes shifting signs, because the me has to find the collective responsibility in the place that I can hold that in the we, and that will create a new us. It will.
What I love about me is you flip the M upside down and it's a we. So it's just a matter of changing the perspective. When you brought up the chair, I have to bring up that I had seen during the Middle Ages, people didn't have chairs, and they would carry with them a chair so they could sit down. It was mind-blowing. So when you bring that up, I thought with ancient older cultures. Laura, you have a idea here?
I'm trying to think of how to a thread to that.
Or anything.
But yeah, well, I just think, it'll be an interesting way of seeing how this manifests and being proactive with it, with the Aries. And
yes, trust. Go ahead. I'm excited.
And because Aries is fast moving, it's like whatever shift is happening, it's like it's going to keep changing. So if you don't quite like where you've landed, give it a minute. It's gonna right, like that was the New England. The phrase was like, you don't like the weather, wait a minute, right? It's always going to change. So that's part of this evolution. Is it's not stagnant. It's a fire cardinal sign. It's going to keep moving and keep evolving.
Thank you again, and love to all. Thank you.
Thank you for joining this vibrant and insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her guests awaken consciousness by connecting heart and soul consciousness patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.